You know exactly how this story ends. A prince pushes through the overgrown thorns, delivers a magical kiss to wake the sleeping princess, and they immediately celebrate a royal wedding. This diagram represents Charles Perrault's original 1697 publication of the tale. If you look at the structure of his text, that famous happily ever after conclusion occurs right here, exactly halfway through the story. Over the centuries, modern retellings and animation studios systematically removed everything that happens after the wedding to keep the narrative suitable for children. To understand the actual legacy of the fairy tale, we have to look closely at that hidden second half. Waking up didn't solve the princess's problems. It introduced her to a predatory world she was never prepared for. The foundation of Perrault's text matches the myth we know. An uninvited fairy delivers a lethal curse, a good fairy softens it to a 100-year sleep, and a prince eventually arrives to break the spell. Immediately following the awakening, the prince and princess marry, but the prince refuses to take his new bride home. They hide their union for 2 whole years, living in secret while having 2 children, a daughter named Aurora and a son named Day. He hides his family because he is terrified of his own mother. The queen is secretly an ogress, brought into the royal family solely for her vast wealth. It is whispered around the court that she constantly struggles to suppress a biological craving for the flesh of young children. The prince only acknowledges his marriage publicly after his father passes away. Now crowned as the new king, he finally brings his wife and children out of hiding and into the capital city. Moving the family into the royal palace replaces the passive, magical threat of the spindle with an active, intimate predator sleeping under the same roof. Shortly after bringing his family to the capital, the new king leaves to wage war against a neighboring emperor. He hands the government over to the ogress, who immediately exploits her absolute power by banishing the queen and the children to an isolated country estate in the woods. A few days later, the ogress visits the estate to issue a horrifying command. She orders her clerk of the kitchen to butcher her 4-year-old granddaughter, Aurora, and serve the child for dinner, specifically requesting she be prepared with sauce Robert, a rich reduction of onions, mustard, and wine. This logic flowchart tracks the cook's desperate survival strategy. He knows he cannot outright refuse the demands of an ogress. Instead, he smuggles Aurora to his own wife to hide in their quarters. He then slaughters a young lamb and dresses it with heavy sauce Robert, perfectly masking the substitution. 8 days later, the ogress demands her 3-year-old grandson, Little Day. The cook hides the boy and serves a tender young goat. When she eventually orders him to slit the throat of the young queen, the cook tricks her a 3rd time by preparing a young deer. This high-stakes culinary deception holds up until one evening, the ogress is prowling the courtyard, sniffing for fresh meat. She hears Little Day crying because his mother is scolding him. Recognizing their voices, she realizes she has been eating livestock. Furious at the deception, she orders a massive tub to be hauled into the center of the courtyard and filled with toads, vipers, and serpents. She commands her guards to tie the hands of the queen, the children, and the treasonous cook, preparing to throw all of them alive into the pit. Notice the survival mechanics here. Salvation in this brutal phase of the story does not come from royal bloodlines or omnipotent fairies. It relies entirely on the desperate cunning of a working-class cook. The execution is stopped at the very last second, but only because the king unexpectedly rides into the courtyard, returning early from his war. Caught red-handed, the terrified ogress throws herself headfirst into the tub and is instantly devoured by the exact creature she gathered for her family. It is an intense, visceral climax. Why do we completely forget about the vipers, the deception, and the cannibalism when we recount this story today? This timeline tracks the evolution of the text, starting with Perrault in 1697. As fairy tales transitioned from dark entertainment for French aristocrats to sanitized bedtime stories for children, editors like the Brothers Grimm actively chopped off the violent second half of the narrative. Perrault's unabridged tale leaves us with a stark reflection on survival. Waiting for destiny to break a magical curse is easy. Surviving the ruthless reality of human nature requires extreme cunning, continuous vigilance, and the help of unexpected allies.